Hi, welcome to my channel, Keto for Real People. Making my very first video. It's called A Keto Story for Real People. The reason I decided to make this video is because I started keto about 6 weeks ago, and I've seen some amazing changes in just my weight and how I feel. And I just wanted to share this message with as many people as possible in a way that's straightforward and also hopefully inspiring. And ever since I've gotten into this, I've been known to corner friends and family members and neighbors and go on and on about the keto diet, and everyone's probably getting really sick of it. So I thought, well, why don't I just go online and go on and on about it? And that way you can just press pause or turn off the video whenever you feel like it. So feel free to do that. But if you like it, share it with people. So why am I making this video? Another reason is because I think that stories and testimonials are really important when it comes to diet. And part of the reason is because some kind of diet can sound really great on paper or in theory. For instance, the grand old idea of if you want to lose weight, why don't you just eat less and exercise more? And that has worked for some people in the short term and even for a few people in the long term. But for the majority of the population, it doesn't work. And that's why there's like a million gazillion books and web pages and everything out there on the internet, different kinds of diets and stuff, because the basic theory behind calories in and calories out sounds good on paper, but it doesn't really work for people. So, if you're wanting to find a diet that works, I think that you should find a diet that has worked for other people. Not that it'll always work for you, but the more testimonies, the better. So, another reason why I wanted to make this video is because it's my personality that whenever I get interested in something, I tend to go like crazy geeky on the research. So I've been totally geeking out about the keto diet for the last 6 weeks. I've been like reading blog posts, like hundreds of blog posts. I've listened to dozens and dozens of podcasts. I've read several books. And I know that not everybody has either the time or the interest level to put that amount of research into it. So I'd like to kind of share the top tips that I've learned from all of my geeking out, maybe in a way that is a little bit more interesting and easy to follow, and just as part of a story. So let's get started. Real quick, I just want to say what this video is not. If this is your very first experience with keto and you looked up this video because you wanted to know the basics of what do I eat on the keto diet and what is a ketone, there's a lot of good resources out there that I'll link to in the show notes, but I didn't necessarily make this video about the basics how to. But having said that, I think there's still a lot of value to listening to this video now. If you want, it's up to you. And then later, just going and finding out that information later if you want to. So, here is my keto story. I have to admit that as recently as a few months ago, I had said some really negative things about the keto diet and also about low carb diets. So I have to admit that I said that I thought the keto diet was extreme and that I thought it was weird and I thought it was dumb. And the first reason why I said that is just the basic human nature. I heard someone say recently that people are usually down on whatever they're not up on. And I basically just wasn't up on the keto diet. I didn't know what it was, I didn't know the science behind it. And that's why I was down on it. I was ignorant. Um, I have to give a shout out to my little sister who has known about the keto diet forever, and I didn't listen to her. I'm sorry. You were right about everything, Robin. If you guys have a little sister, you should listen to her more often. That's just my personal opinion. Well, the other reason why I was down on the keto diet is because I have tried low carb diets several times in my life and I had felt really, really terrible. And I didn't understand why I felt like this because I had heard a lot of other people say that they had had success and they had lost weight and they had also felt really great and they hadn't had any hunger. So I didn't know if there was something wrong with me, um, if I had a different kind of body type or blood type or something like that. But I just knew that I felt bad when I was on low carb diets. And so that's another reason why I was saying negative things about low carb diets. So, how did I come to change my mind? Well, let me give you just a quick background. I'm 40. When I was about 30 years old, I started to put on a little bit of weight each year, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 pounds. And after a few years, I started to realize that I was about 20 to 25 pounds over what I felt like a healthy weight for me. And I also have type 2 diabetes in my family and heart disease on my dad's side. And then on my mom's side, I have cancer. So between my mom and her two sisters and her parents, 5 out of 5 of those people have had cancer. The 4 women have had breast cancer, and my grandfather had prostate cancer. So I just have all of that against me. And if you guys know anything about type 2 diabetes, it's extremely hereditary, which means that somebody could be 300 pounds, and if it doesn't run in their family, they might not get type 2 diabetes, but someone else can be like I was 20 or 30 pounds overweight and get type 2 diabetes. So I've always tried to be a little bit proactive about that. And I was just thinking if I'm putting on 3 to 5 pounds every year, this is going to be a problem by the time I get older, just not even from a cosmetic reason, just even because of type 2 diabetes. And I also know that I've always had, let's say, a special interest in sugar. So, yeah, it was just something that I started to become aware of. So, over the years, I've tried several different diets. I've done Weight Watchers twice, and I lost about 20 to 25 pounds each time. But both times I did it, I gained the weight back after I stopped counting the little points. And at first, I wasn't realizing that I was gaining it back. And then, um, have any of you ever been through this where you're like afraid to get on the scale and then it just keeps getting worse and then you keep just not getting on the scale? Yeah, that was basically what happened to me several times. And then, like I said, I tried the low carb diet and then a few different times. And then a couple of years ago, um, like I said, I realized that sugar was a big thing in my life. So I decided to cut sugar out 100%. So I did go actually a full year without any sugar. And during this time, I was also jogging. I worked up to a 10K. So 3 times a week, I would jog for 10K, which is 6 miles. And I did do this for a year and I did lose my 25 pounds again. But then I stopped and then I gained back 30. And so a few months ago, I was just feeling like something needed to change. I wanted to lose this 30 pounds, but I didn't want to do the exact same thing that I had done in the past because if you kind of picked up on my pattern, I started gaining back more weight than I was losing. And also, I thought, what's the point of this really hard year where you're working yourself so hard and starving yourself, and then at the end, you weigh more than you began? So I just didn't want to do that again. But I did feel just unhappy and just kind of overweight. And we've also been going through kind of a stressful time in our family with some financial difficulties, and I may or may not have taken a lot of my stress out on large bowls of chocolate ice cream. Can anybody out there relate to that? So that's where I was just kind of going to for my comfort, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. But I didn't know what kind of diet I was going to start. So I came up with what I thought was this great idea. So my idea was that I was going to research some different diets to try, and I was going to try them for a specified amount of time. I hadn't figured out what it was going to be yet, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, something like that. And then I was going to record how I felt on the diet. What were my chances of sticking with it long term based on how I felt? And also how much weight I lost, which was probably the thing that was the least most important. Why am I having a hard time talking? Least most important qualification is how quickly I lost the weight because I've mentioned just going off diets and I wanted to find one that I could stick with for life. So, not long after I had this idea, I strayed onto this website and it was called the Bulletproof website. And there's a book called the Bulletproof Diet. And I learned that there's a guy named Dave Asprey who needed to lose 100 pounds. And he had the same idea that I had of trying a bunch of different diets, but he did the whole like recording thing a lot more vigorously than I was ever planning on do it. So he did things like he took his ketones and he took his blood sugar and he took his insulin levels and his cholesterol and his triglycerides, and he just went all out in the recording stage. And then he put all of his results in a book called The Bulletproof Diet. And so, pretty much like the second I heard about it, I went to my library's website, and turns out it was not, I didn't have to put it on hold. I just downloaded the ebook immediately onto my computer. And they also had the audio copy. So I started listening to it. And I probably listened to like 3 hours of it the first day. And I was taking a walk and doing stuff around the house and listening. And then at night, I go back and reread what I read on the Kindle version that I had downloaded and highlighted it and stuff because it has, scientific stuff in it. Sometimes that can be a little bit hard to follow when you're listening to it. So, pretty much that same day that I started reading the book, I decided that I was going to do this keto thing and I was going to go all out and I was starting right now. And I had been going through this thing for the last couple of months where I was like, okay, I'm going to start a diet tomorrow. Okay, Monday. Okay, next Monday. And it's just kept going on and on and on. And so finally, I was just like, right now, like this second, I am starting this diet. So I went from eating carbs in the morning and then carbs at 10 o'clock and then carbs at lunch. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings, in The Hobbit, just like breakfast. I ate breakfast and 11th seas and I ate lunch and tea and dinner and supper. And it was kind of like that carbs before bed. I think I missed that one, carbs before bed. So maybe like a gazillion carbs a day down to I started eating 20 carbs, which is 20 grams is like the amount of carbs in one apple. So it was pretty extreme. Do not try this at home. Um, I felt fantastic for the first couple days. And I remember calling my sister Robin. She's the one that knew all about the keto diet, but I wouldn't listen to her. So I called her on day 2 and I was like, I started this new diet and I feel fantastic. So excited about it. And I had read in the Bulletproof Diet, Dave Asprey went on and on about how sluggish he had felt when he was eating carbs. And then he had all this energy. His brain worked better. He just had his whole life was changed. And so I was super excited, pumped. By day 2, I was like, this is me. I'm on fire. And then day 3 hit me. Day 3, I woke up with a headache. Every muscle in my body ached, even though I hadn't done any exercise. I had the worst sugar and carb cravings. What is wrong with me? Carb cravings that I've ever had in my life. And I just felt irritable and I felt terrible. I felt absolutely terrible. And this went on for a couple days. And I was getting so frustrated that I wanted to take that Bulletproof Diet book and I wanted to hurl it across the room as hard as I could, except it was a digital copy on my computer. So I couldn't do that. I was really mad and I thought it was all just a bunch of baloney. But a phrase popped into my head when I was on day 5 and feeling really bad. And the phrase was I'd heard somebody mention the word the keto flu. Now, if you know something about keto, you're realizing how in the dark I was because a lot of people know this term, but I didn't. But I just kind of heard it. So I went and I Googled it and I read that every one of my symptoms that I was experiencing, the crankiness and the carbs and everything, is just what they call the keto flu. It's when you go through carb sugar withdrawal. It's kind of like withdrawal from a drug, and it can take a long time to get over. But the thing for me that was like a lightning bulb that went on was to find out that the keto flu has an end. And I did not care when the end was. I didn't even care if it was 2 or 3 weeks away. I just wanted to know that the keto flu has an end. And that changed everything for me. I think the thing about me is that I can go through something really, really hard as long as I know how long or that there is going to be an ending. And I had never known when I had done the low carb diets in the past and I had felt really bad. First of all, I had never known that. this was a normal thing that happens to you and that it was a thing that has an ending. And so that's why I had such a bad feeling about all those low carb diets. I had never gotten past the keto flu before. So I learned that the keto flu has an end, and I'm like, okay, I'm sticking with this, and I'm going to get through to the end of this keto flu thing, and I'm going to see how I feel. So, one thing that I learned from this lesson that I want you to walk away with too is that it's really important for us in our diet that we educate ourselves and that we know what's going on with our bodies. And that's translated directly to willpower for me. In other words, if I'm running low on willpower and I'm like, oh, why am I doing this diet again? And I learn what's going on in my body, then it totally gives me the motivation to continue. And so that's what happened. I started to learn about something called becoming fat adapted, which is a process that your body goes through that can take a long time, days and weeks, where your body has to learn how to burn fat as fuel. Ever since we were maybe 1 years old, we have been burning sugar for fuel. And the cells in our body actually have to build the apparatus and the mitochondria to be able to burn the fat. So I had this lifelong question that I had never had completely answered before I started studying the keto diet. And what I didn't understand was, why is it that somebody can be 30 pounds or 100 pounds or 200 pounds overweight? And yet, when they start cutting back on calories, they start feeling really, really, really hungry. And I didn't understand why, because even 30 pounds overweight, that's weeks and that's months of fat storage that I can live on. So, didn't my body store that fat there for me to use at a later time? And if so, how comes when I want to start using it, I feel really, really cranky? Just to give you an example of that, one time a few years ago when we lived in another state, I was on a low carb diet and I had invited some friends over that had a lot of kids and they were running around and acting kind of crazy like kids do. And I had made cookies for this family, but because I was on a low carb diet, I hadn't allowed myself to have a single cookie. But I started to feel more and more irritable as the afternoon was wearing on, and I was just getting tense and I wasn't able to handle the noise and the excitement. I just wasn't able to be a fun person, and I was just having more and more anxiety. So I finally broke down and just ate a cookie. And about 10 minutes after eating the cookie, I just totally relaxed. And I was all of a sudden enjoying having these friends over and having the kids and the laughter and the loudness. And I thought to myself, you know what? I don't care what kind of diet I ever go on, but it has to have carbs because I have to know how to be a functional person in real life. I have to be able to have fun and relax and not be hangry all the time, which was what I was. I was hangry. And what I didn't understand was that here I was several days into a diet. I don't remember how long, but your liver stores about 24 hours of sugar. It was just called glycogen. And once you burn through that, that's when you really start to get that hangry feeling. So I don't know if you've ever been on a diet and like the first day or two, you're like, woohoo, this is awesome. I feel great. Kind of like I was saying when I started the keto diet before I got the keto flu. And then you get to day 3 and you just like crash and your liver glycogen's out and you haven't adapted to burning fat yet. So that was just another example of when you're not adapted to burning fat, you just feel crazy. You just feel jittery and really unhappy. And in my mind, I kind of imagined that my body was like this spoiled toddler and it had this idea of exactly what weight it wanted to be. And as soon as I tried to drop, like, let's say 3 ounces of body fat, it was like the toddler in the grocery store that just starts throwing a temper tantrum. And so I thought my body was just throwing a temper tantrum and being like, no, I'm going to pretend like you're starving. And then it was this battle of willpower of me being like, no, you're going to listen to me. You have 30 pounds. You have more than 30 pounds, but at least 30 pounds body fat to last you for months and months. So you're not getting any more food. Obviously, I was eating some food, but it was really good for me to learn that my body wasn't making it up. The feelings that I was having about hunger were actually real hunger because if you've been burning sugar for all of those years, your body just can't access its fat. And so there's a certain element of listening to your body. Although, if you're going through the fat adapted stage where you're getting there, you can do it like crazy, like I did it. Like you can go all out with just cutting the carbs, or there's an easier way to taper the carbs off. Um, I mentioned that I really liked the book Bulletproof Diet, and I think that you should read it second. I think it should be the second book that you read on the keto diet. I think the first book should be this one called The Keto Reset Diet because it's a lot more basic. I feel like the concepts in the Bulletproof Diet are just really advanced. They're for people who've already been on the keto diet and then they want to tweak it. And I don't get any kind of money for, I'm not that important for promoting any of these books. I just really like the Keto Reset Diet. The basic idea behind it is you start tapering off of carbs before you go all the way into ketosis. And I'll talk about that some more in my second video. Okay, so understanding that my body had to be trained to burn fat over time suddenly shed light on the real battle behind my personal weight troubles and then so many other people in America's weight troubles. So, I would read about some diet and I would muster up all my willpower and I would put myself in a mental stranglehold saying, you will follow these diet rules. And then I would begin to have one of those experiences where my body and my brain would start actually shutting down and actually screaming at me to eat something. And if you're one of those people who are just naturally thin, you might not have any idea of what I'm talking about because it might be that your insulin is a little bit more steady, which means that you don't have the blood sugar drops, which is really what I'm describing when I talk about being crazy and hungry is my blood sugar dropping. Your insulin might not overreact to sugar and it might just keep you a little bit more steady. But on the other hand, I just feel a lot of compassion for people who are overweight. Like today, I saw a woman who was at least 300 pounds who was walking into a store and she was really having a hard time moving. And my heart just went out to her, not even just cosmetically, just because thinking how hard it is to not be able to get around very easily. And I don't see somebody like that and think, oh, that person lacks willpower. I think that person needs the tools and the education to learn how to feel differently. And I kind of wanted to go up to her and talk to her about the keto diet, but I didn't. I didn't do it. But then, I thought I could make a video and maybe somebody like that would stray onto YouTube and find it. And for most topics in life, I really think face to face, person to person is the best way to communicate things. But I think when it comes to diet, maybe the computer is a really good way to talk about diet because it's impersonal. You don't have to corner somebody in an awkward way. You don't have to make them feel ashamed, like they're supposed to be listening to your spiel about how they need to lose weight. They can just kind of wander on and explore the ideas at their own pace. And I have to admit that when I first started the keto diet, I didn't tell anybody that I was gonna start it, except maybe my family, because I was afraid that I wasn't gonna stick with it or is just gonna be another one of those things that I start. So I think the anonymity of videos is kind of good because people can think about it and they don't have to commit necessarily right away. They can just gain information at first. And you don't have to feel awkward about approaching people and making them feel like you think they're supposed to lose weight and all that kind of stuff. So, back to the science of becoming fat adapted. We struggle with our weight because even when we have months or years of fat storage, we are unable to access it. And we really feel like a person who's starving to death when we're on a diet. And when our brain and our muscles aren't getting the only fuel that they know how to burn, which is sugar, or if they aren't getting enough of it, or it's not often enough, like on Weight Watchers, and our liver glycogen runs out, we have that irritability. And the real reason that I kept gaining back that 20 or 30 pounds after each diet was because it's not primarily that I was missing eating a lot of food itself, but I was missing that feeling of just being relaxed and satisfied and not worrying about what I was eating and not counting my food and just being a happy person who wasn't grumpy and who wasn't hangry. And I started to feel like if it's a tug of war between me being a happy and fun and relaxed person and then how I look, like, is really how I look that important? Although I do have to think about the type 2 diabetes thing too. But I really wanted to be a happy, relaxed person and not on a crazy diet all the time, not measuring and counting my food. But I just want you to imagine with me for a second that there is a way for you to burn your own body fat while feeling good. Your own body fat that your body put there for you to use later and for you to burn it where you didn't feel grumpy, you didn't feel irritable, you didn't feel hangry, you didn't feel crazy, and you weren't each day whittling away at your willpower until finally you were on the fast track to Dunkin' Donuts. I may or may not have a Dunkin' Donuts drive through 1.8 miles from my house, by the way. So I know all about Dunkin' Donuts. um, so, what if you could lose your excess body fat while actually feeling even better than you felt when you were binging? So, do you remember that feeling that we all have when it's like you've been on a diet because there's like some vacation or some wedding or some high school reunion coming up and you've been dieting, dieting, it's over, and then you're like, "That's it, I'm eating everything I want," and you feel so good. Remember that feeling? Or, you know that feeling when you, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Okay, so remember that feeling when you're gonna start the diet on Monday, but it's actually Sunday. I don't know how many times I've done this. But I'm like, "Okay, it's Sunday, I gotta quick eat a bunch of stuff that I'm not gonna be able to eat starting tomorrow." And then if you're like me, Monday comes along and then the diet doesn't even start, so it's just like an exercise gaining weight. Like an exercise in gaining weight was what I was meaning to say. But what if you could feel that good all the time and you could also be burning your own fat stores? So that's what the keto diet is all about. You know, the thing about a personal testimony is that nobody can watch this video and say, no, that didn't happen to her because I know what happened to me. So now I'm going to explain to you actually how I feel now that I'm on the keto diet. Um, since going on the keto diet, I feel like my body has been replaced with a different kind of appetite and a different kind of wiring towards food. Now, some of you are going to relate to what I'm saying, and others of you are going to think I'm crazy, but I don't know that I ever really used to feel full. And that was especially true when carbs were involved. Like, when it comes to eating like white rice or cinnamon rolls or donuts or ice cream, I don't know that I had a stopping mechanism. I think after a while, I was like, um, okay, now I'm not craving it as much as I was when I um, first started eating. But I think that if like weight and money were not a, a hindrance, I could have just, I felt like I could have kept eating forever. And this has been the first time in my life where I've actually eaten a meal and felt full or like left food on my plate. It's such an amazing experience. And if you haven't ever had that, I wish you could try the keto diet just for that one result, just to know what it's like to eat a meal and actually feel full and actually not have to use your willpower to stop eating. That's been so amazing just to feel satisfied. Um, I've noticed that my brain has started functioning significantly better. Um, I sat down one day and I read a book I read 100 pages in a book. It was called The Complete Guide to Fasting by Jason Fung, which is all about intermittent fasting, which I think it should be the third book you read on keto, in my opinion, because I kind of went out of order and it was a little difficult for me. But maybe you've always been able to do that, like sit down and read 100 pages in one sitting of a book that's not a novel, but it has like difficult scientific terms and stuff. But I was not able to do that before without my mind just turning to mush and just being hungry and just getting up and not being able to concentrate. So that's definitely changed. And that's another thing. Like, even if the scale never changed for you, if you could try the keto diet just to see the difference in how your brain functions. I've really had less sleepiness after lunch that I used to have when I was eating carbs. And there was just kind of a brain fog that I don't even know that I was completely conscious of until it went away. And then I realized how different I felt. Um, Now that I've been on the keto diet, I have absolutely no sugar cravings, which is maybe the first time in my life that I've been free of Dunkin' Donuts cravings, ice cream cravings, chocolate. Actually, on the keto diet, you can eat some really dark chocolate or sugar free chocolate, but um, I haven't had like crazy cravings. I've even had my family sitting next to me eating a bowl of ice cream, and I've been totally fine. I remember what it was like to enjoy eating that stuff, but a craving is so much different. A craving is like you're sitting there trying to do something and you can't do it because all you can do is think about food and sugar. And I just have not had that. And I think that would be another non scale victory for if you try the keto diet. And if nothing else, you just got to have a taste of what it feels like to not be a slave to sugar and to carbs. Is just amazing. And I kind of feel like I have exchanged my body for what I would call like a skinny person's body, which was like this appetite which could just like take it or leave it when it came to food. And I don't think those people necessarily had like all the willpower in the world. I think that they just have maybe a different wiring when it comes to carbs than I have. And I actually have been able to experience that. So that's been really cool. And it's not just about the scale. Like, I did lose 16 pounds in 4 weeks. So that was really exciting. But more exciting than that is just feeling like a different person, I think. Um, so I want to end my keto story by encouraging you to try giving up carbs as a tool to make your appetite and your hunger feel different. It's about, for the first time in your life, maybe feeling satisfied after you eat and feeling indifferent towards food after meals. And it's about being able to skip meals and not be bothered by hunger, which is such a cool thing once you get fat adapted and you get past the keto flu, which I'll talk about more in the next video. It's about being able to forego things and not feel deprived, to be able to take or leave dessert and just not even really care. It's about experiencing craving, freedom from food cravings, and control over food cravings instead of those things controlling you. And it's also about just having victory over food. And I think maybe that's the most exciting thing. So, in my next video, I want to talk about how to get started on your keto story and some books and resources to get you started. So, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and you think it would be helpful, please share it. And also subscribe to my channel, Keto for Real People. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.